Hi, everyone. This is Mitchell. This is a bonus episode of the Telling the Tale podcast. We're not focusing this time on a Telltale game, and that's because within the last year, I've tried to start another podcast, and I think sometimes it's important to look at the cards you were dealt and say, hey, we tried. It was an earnest attempt. Didn't work out. This was going to be a Game of the Month podcast where I talked to a bunch of different developers about the games they worked on once a month. We would get an interview and we would just really tackle anything that we wanted to talk about the game. It was going to be a loose format, but I did have some segments that I brought on every time. I've actually recorded 3 of these in total, but 2 of them were with people who got back to me later and said because of either layoffs in the games industry or checking with their company, and it turns out that they just weren't allowed to put that information out there. I had to retract those, and I had more interviews scheduled to do, but then people just kept getting laid off. It was a bad year for the games industry. So, yeah, the podcast can't happen. That does, however, leave me with one interview that I thought was really great, and I enjoyed doing it a lot. I hope you like listening to it as well. It's with Remi Siu, who is the director of 1000xResist. Now, 1000xResist was a highly acclaimed, independent 2024 video game about clones, about the 2019 Hong Kong uprising, about the future of the Earth with global warming, about COVID, about alien invasions, about everything that you can imagine. And I loved getting to talk with Remy a little bit about how those ideas come together, how during the development of a video game, you can wrestle with so many different concepts that are on the surface unrelated and bring them together to such a cohesive whole. And we're going to get into that. I just also wanted to preface during the beginning here, there's going to be allusions to segments that I wanted to make a regular thing for this podcast. And because this is the only episode that we're putting out in any kind of public-facing way, it's a little embarrassing for me that I made a special drink for 1000xResist, and I talk about it like, yeah, I always do this, and then this is the only one you hear about. But, that's I guess that's just how it is sometimes. Also, big note here, we do go into spoilers of 1000xResist because the intention of this podcast was that it was a Game of the Month club. We would all play it together, the listenership and me, the host, and then have an interview where we get to listen to the creator talk about the work at the end. So this is an interview made with the assumption that you have played 1000xResist. Please go play this game. I can't stop you from just listening to it if you want to hear the interview and don't want to play the game. But please, it's a great game. I highly recommend it. And if you're listening to this because you're subscribed to the Telling the Tale podcast feed, I think that you would really like it if you like narrative video games like what Telltale does. 1000xResist is much more in the lineage of visual novels and things like that. But I think it's worth checking out as another branch of what narrative video games can do. Without any further ado, here's an interview. Welcome to the show. My guest today is Remi Siu. How are you doing?
Good. How's it going?
It's going all right. Hecky Grace.
Oh, Hecky Grace. Yeah.
Does that get old? How often do you get that?
No. I mean, it doesn't. I'm always just shocked that. Well, I mean, okay, I don't know how other people feel. Like maybe other people feel like it's getting old, but like I'm just saying that it's always like surprising to us still that people say such things IRL. And so
well, like, I'll cop to the fact that maybe I haven't been saying it IRL so often, but
yes,
in this one particular example,
well, I mean,
I thought I'd break it out. Yeah. So for every one of these that I've been doing, I've made a drink for myself to drink during the show based on the game
nice.
That we're talking about. So I could have made an Inside Sunrise. That would have been the thing, I think.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know how I should interpret that. So I did a stylistic interpretation of it, and I got an Arnold Palmer, which I felt was close enough thematically in terms of you got the iced tea, which is the traditional, and then the
Uh-huh.
lemonade, which is more of the poppy contemporary coming together, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
1000x Resist. And then I threw in about just the smallest amount, just to be barely sensible of Kraken rum, just
Uh-huh.
to show that darker side of the story. How do you think I did?
That's pretty good. Pretty good. What time is it?
It is 11 a.m. It's the smallest amount. It's the
No,
smallest
I'm
amount.
just kidding. No, that sounds really good, actually. And
um,
I think that's, yeah, super
yeah. Well,
thoughtful.
thank you. I think, inspired to do this for all of the episodes, actually, mostly because of 1000x Resist. Let me just start by saying I really liked it. It's pretty good.
Thank you.
It's a really good game. There were so many ideas in 1000x Resist that I don't think I ever would have put together in my mind. I would have never seen them as being local to one another. That, having now played the game, which I would recommend all of our listeners do, it's available currently on Nintendo Switch and Windows PC, if I have that correct, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Steam, GOG,
Steam.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. There's so many ideas in it that now seem obvious. That, like,
Hmm.
oh, of course, a cloning facility would have a lot of mother problems, a lot of
Yep.
relationships between mothers and daughters.
Yeah.
Of course, that is a lens that we could use to view the 2019 Hong Kong protests, which I'll admit I did not know much about before the game and before living that moment along with everyone else. But now I've been introduced to it in such a thoughtful and unique way that it's hard not to think about it. So just in those ways, I want to start off by hopefully I'm not being too complimentary right off the bat, but I really liked it. It was a really interesting experience and unique among video games, especially in this style.
Thank you so much. No, it means a lot to us. I mean, that was our goal in general. But anyway, sorry, I should, yeah,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah.
So why don't we start there, actually? I would like to talk a little bit about the relationship between Hong Kong and the development of this game. Um,
Right.
Something that I was trying to puzzle together because I'm a game developer myself. What came first? Did we have the idea of making a game that touched on the very turbulent and present political situation in Hong Kong, or the fact that in the future there might be this very sci-fi, um, maybe ungrounded, fantastical scenario of clone ships? Or was the relationship between those ideas something that came first? What was the driving force between getting those thoughts together and making a story that started at point A and goes to point B?
So I mean that those particular things, those two particular things, um, it's really hard to say what came first. And I think part of it is that, in general, the way that we make things, or the way that I make things as well, is like we try to be very porous with things happening either in our lives or in the world around us contemporaneously. And I know this is like not a, I've come to understand, or I guess I knew before because I played a lot of games. Like this is not a common thing in games, but it is a very common thing in, say, like our practice,
Mm-hmm.
in the performing arts or in other things, right? Like, some interfacing with the world to some degree. And so, um, I often say that 1000 times resisted like has like, um, it's a very it's very influenced by the year 2020, right? And some of those demonstrations, they
Absolutely.
go back to like 2019, and of course there's a whole history around those as well, like that go all the way through the 2010s and earlier. But I would say that, you know a lot of the game and kind of feeling out the premise and how things kind of connect together is very much us being like porous with what was occurring in our lives and in the world around starting to 2020, right? Like 2019 and further, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
So
Something I didn't even mention before as I was going through all those ideas is that the pandemic is very, very clearly part of the
yeah,
story in
yeah,
this game. Not the specific pandemic that we lived through, but a different one
mhm, yeah.
that might have forced people to live in a similar-ish kind of way to what we saw in real life.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and I think the biggest way in which, like it may be present in the game is a contemporaneous or our contemporaneous understanding of how a pandemic would play out, um, versus a more like uh fictionalized or like our previous understanding of it, I should say.
mm,
Right? Like and because I as far as I know, I think most people um have not lived through a pandemic of this kind before, right? And so it was kind of surprising to us in many ways on how we would deal with it versus say like I don't know in more some other entertainment we see about pandemic.
sure.
It's like people are like um the way it plays out is that's how we thought it might play out, and then of course it actually happened and we're like what, this is very strange. It plays out very differently than we thought it would. um
Well, one of the
mhm,
most difficult parts of making a game is that they take forever to make. This is a
right.
huge issue that like
Yeah.
even the average ones can take 3+
Oh yeah.
years, and the
Yeah.
big ones take
A
5+,
decade.
six
It took
plus
a
years.
decade.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we're seeing like Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out soon. It's been in development since I think I was literally in high school, and I'm in my
That's
30s
wild.
now. So yeah,
That's kind of wild to me because I'm like, yeah, it's true. It's like you think about these things and how it intersects with people's lives. I think the first time this happened to me was like I remember being on Reddit, um, looking at like, I think the Adventure Time Distant Lands had just been announced, like these like. And then
mm,
I went to the subreddit, the R Adventure Time subreddit, and in the comments, somebody was like, "Oh my God, Adventure Time is coming back. That's so nostalgic. I've been watching it since I was like 12." Or it's been like, it's been
oh,
like for them, it's only been like 4 years. And
yeah,
for me, I felt like, wow, they like really turned around and like, starting a new thing after the end of the show. But to them, I think they may have gone through like all of university or something or all of college.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That's so wild. Like video games very often, if you follow like one franchise of them, will
yeah,
take nowadays it could be like a 5 year gap between game one
yeah,
and game two.
yeah,
That's totally normal. But 5 years means that someone liked the first game in middle school and played the second game in college. And that is
yeah. No,
like that's such a pivotal part of your
that's
life that
extreme. That's extremely
yeah.
wild. Like, and
Yeah.
you think back to how spoiled. Like, I don't know. I'm a '90s kid, right? So like how spoiled we were when we were getting like Final Fantasy 7, then Final Fantasy 8, then Final Fantasy
Yeah.
9, then Final Fantasy
Yeah.
10. And what
Yeah.
felt like, I felt like my memory of that was that like, I felt like I was kind of a similar person throughout all of those, you know, in the sense that I think it was all kind of like in elementary school. Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
somehow that all happened and occurred. And I don't think that happens anymore. And that's really strange. Something happened.
Yeah,
Anyways.
to me, when I was a kid, like
Yeah.
and even still, I'm not just gonna say I'm just when I was a kid
Yeah.
about this, but
Yeah.
my favorite game franchise is Banjo Kazooie, and the
Oh
gap
yeah.
between Banjo Tooie in 2000 and Nuts and Bolts on the Xbox was 8 years,
Yeah.
and those 8 years of my life I think felt about as long as 2008 all the way to now. Like
Yeah.
that feels like
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
amount of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but to bring it back to
Mm.
1000. Oh, you just said 1000 times resist. Okay, is
Yes.
that the
I
name of the
mean,
game?
that's how we would say it. But these days I'm just like it's totally fine. However, people say like 1000x resist, 1000 time resist. I think 1000x resist. I think in terms of both of them will lead you to this like the Google. If you Google both, it will lead you there.
Yeah, so okay,
Internally,
for
though,
listeners
we
only, it is
yeah,
the letter X, but
yes,
how to interpret that is
it's time.
definitely interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So
Um,
for us,
yeah,
it's times, but
okay,
yeah, it's like a
1000
multiple.
times resist.
Yeah,
Good to know. Um, but I bring that up about how long games take to make because I view that as a huge difficulty, or it introduces a huge difficulty in staying porous, like how you're talking about
yeah,
these games
yeah, yeah.
um, being developed. How do you how do you stay receptive to including current day happenings
Yeah.
in your games when they take a long time to get from beginning to end?
Yeah, I mean I mean part of it is that you um it's about how would I say this? It's you know, I think if you are doing something like that, um it's important to reach into that either event or whatever occurrence and find the affect of it.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Find the underlying affect of it versus say like the fine detail of it, right?
Oh,
And
sure. Okay.
I would say like the Hong Kong stuff is more specific in the sense that like this is like a an event, but it wasn't say like we weren't um like looking at any particular events inside of that event. You know, say like we do reference some of them for people um who know. If you know, you know. Like, but in many ways, it's really about either the fallout effect or the affect of it inside. Um, and the same with the pandemic, right? Like it wasn't specifically about. It was even like a different type of disease, and then also, even though we borrowed the kind of contemporaneous understanding of a pandemic in 2020, I think a lot of it was just zooming into the affect versus like a specific event. And I think for both of these things, we were pretty confident that they would be historical in a sense. Um, like it would, we would still be talking about it, uh,
Hmm.
5 years later or 10 years later or 15 years later. Um, so yeah, that's one of those things. I don't know. I mean, I think we also, like we got lucky in the sense that our game took like 3 years to make. We had planned for it to take less time. Um, and we came out and, there's a version of this where like, I don't know, I don't knock on wood. Let's just say theoretically some other really outrageous event occurred. I
Hmm.
mean, many outrageous events are occurring all the time, especially now.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
like, I would say that in 2024, like something on the scale of COVID occurred um, before our game released. Then who knows? Like, I don't know. That would maybe be that would be an event where like it would feel that would be the risk quote unquote risky part if that's what we're talking about in regards to like referencing events that may feel quote unquote out of date or out of touch or out of step. But I think in general, if it's focused on some of the affect and you kind of like unpack the affect and what that how it may relate to your characters or how it may relate to your world building, I think it helps with the fact that it will stay. Um, because you kind of want to have your cake and eat it too. I suppose you want to be able to reference. You want to be porous to the world and interface with the world, but you of course don't want to date yourself hard. But you do want to date yourself in the sense that there's specificity. You know what I mean? It's like trying to have it all. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about a book like The Great Gatsby sometimes as a good example of like, well, it's so in its time. It is so
Yeah.
about the 20s, and it was written in the 20s, and it was released in the 20s,
Yeah.
the 1920s,
Yeah.
and now it's still being assigned reading in
Yeah.
schools
Yeah.
today just
Yeah.
because it is so timeful that it becomes timeless. I think that
Yeah.
1000 times resist will work in a similar way. It'll make sense for years. It'll stay evergreen as it continues to comment on the early part of the 2020s,
Oh, thanks.
mostly exclusively, but it'll be understood, and I think that's a pretty significant achievement.
Thank you. I mean, I think one of the things that I always think about is that um, I know there's how would I say this? Like a vector of people sometimes often wanting to not date themselves in the work, right? The work to be not become dated.
Hmm.
Um, but especially in video games, there's a degree in which, you know, and this is true not only of video games, it's true of film, it's true of, literature, it's true of any art, that you, even if you're not trying, it will happen. Right.
Right.
Like for
Yeah.
example, like you go play something what we may consider timeless in video games. Like let's consider Ocarina of Time timeless, right? Like
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure that is a sentiment that is, um in the world. um and you go play Ocarina of Time, and it's still very much of its time, right? Of all,
Oh,
if you think
absolutely.
even beyond just the immediate experience that you have with it, like you go look at like the technologies involved, you go look at um, the way it controls, the targeting system, all of this stuff, in what we would consider like close to like a timeless um, uh, canonical video game, like that is very much of its time. And I think that's to its credit versus anything else. So to a degree, I'm always like, and maybe people should lean into that, right? Like, and or like be very, and this was something that we talk about in art all the time. It's just be very cognizant of the immediate environment around you and how that may affect
Hmm.
you, and how does that affect your choices. Um, I don't know how players think sometimes, but there's a degree perhaps in the general audience that it's always like, um, you know, people may make things in a vacuum, or there's a virtue to making things in a vacuum, right? But that's or like to be unaffected by forces, but that's not the reality. Most people making anything are immediately affected by the force of like how much time do you have, how much resources do you
Yeah.
have, what, like are you making this, what part of the world are you making this, and like is the are computers expensive where you live, like stuff like this. All of that stuff is like affects how anyone may engage and make anything, I suppose. So
Absolutely. And something that I didn't know about your background and the background of the
mm,
team that made this game before, after I had finished it, was the relationship you all have to theater. And I was
yeah,
wondering if you
yeah,
could speak on that just a little bit. Do you think that, like, because I have, I'll come clean. I have a hypothesis
mm,
about how theater might have affected this game, but
mhm.
I don't want to spoil it. So,
Okay, sure, sure, sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Would you speak
Yeah.
a little bit about how theater might have affected the development of this game?
I think the I mean there's some very like process things from a very like quote unquote surface level. Um
Hmm.
the way that theater perhaps may have affected the game the most is in the way the game is lit.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
I mean I think my specific thing, that one of the specific things that I used to do in the performing arts was use projector light, use projectors as a source of lighting for stage. So I never like, to a degree I was like a quote unquote lighting designer, but I never used analog light. Like I bypass, I just like moved right through analog light, quote unquote analog light.
Hmm.
For maybe audiences, this is light that is like, when you turn it off, it has a curve. Like it's, I don't know how to explain this. It's like, yeah, like it doesn't instantly come on and it doesn't instantly turn off, right?
There's a
Whereas
bit of
like if
a
you,
naturalistic fade in and
yeah,
fade out. Right.
yeah, and then part of it is just like, the way that the lights operate. But then if you look at an LED light, which I would maybe, you know, I'm making drawing a line in the sand here, and I'm just calling them digital lights, even though yeah. Anyways, they're like LED lights and projector lights. Those have an instant on off, and so like I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I just completely went straight there, and um, so a lot of the lighting in the game um, is very much influenced by the way that I would light things in on stage.
Oh, that is
What
so interesting. Not at all what I thought it was
Well,
going to
I
be.
mean, that's like the most
Yeah.
surface like the thing of this. Like I would say, like the way the game may be colored or the way that it may, specifically, uh, uh, no spoilers. Like chapter 6, there's a play, um, and in other places, there's a lot of like volumized, what we would say volumized, like cone lights,
Hmm.
which is exactly how, projector lighting would appear if you have fog in the space where it's like, you would have, I mean, a spotlight, I guess, to that extent. But with a very fine, um, it's just a cone because of the nature of the projector. Anyways, um, on a process level, I would say that we worked in, it's important, I guess, to differentiate. Like we worked in a very like specific lane of theater. So this is like kind of an experimental theater practice that involved theater, dance, and like new media, like with much of what I was talking about, like projectors and things like this, um, and we specifically also worked on had a process of what we would call quote unquote devised performance, where we would be working together in a room to make a work from scratch with all these elements in place, and say it would not come from like a script. Like a more traditional theater process may be that you have a script pre-existing,
Hmm.
um, and then you have a director and you have a yeah like a lighting designer or a sound designer, like, and then you rehearse it. You go through a production process of like, here in Vancouver is quite short because of the economics. It's like 3 weeks, right? You do 3 weeks rehearsal and then you go straight into the run. So, and you have a set designer and everything. In experimental, in our kind of devised performance making, it would not be like that at all. We would kind of like come into a room with like a desire. One of us has a concept for a work or a set of concerns or a set of thematics or questions, and we would call them quote unquote curiosities. Um, and we would try to find a way to manifest that and explore that. And
Oh, that's really
so
cool.
we would, yeah, jam for lack of a better word, um, and make the work. And this would take a much longer period of time than 3 weeks usually. So I mentioned that um, because of the nature of that uh, type of work, and then also um, in Vancouver specifically, there's like a degree of like there's a lack of resources. There's venues with a lot of like bylaws that you can't do certain things. There's like not a lot of spaces in which to rehearse. Like a lot of these processes require a kind of what you see is what you get environment. And so there's a degree in which you need to have all these elements in place. But a lot of spaces in Vancouver didn't really allow that to happen. And it was really onerous. So we learned how to make a lot out of nothing, I guess. This is like the point that I'm coming around to. Um, it's that like, oh, if when people think of theater, they may think of like a set, or they may think of like, I don't know, um, like a little turny thing where people can fake that they're walking on stage or whatever. None of that, right? it literally was like, hey, we have a black box and we have a bunch of lights, we have sound. Um, how do we make a whole world out of just those parts? Um, and so that type of training, where you have to then think quite formally, um, I think really affected the work in a lot of ways,
I see.
or was
And you can
helpful.
tell that that sort of philosophy might come into how you use the iris model in the game in
Yeah,
so many different
yeah,
ways. The
yeah,
characters
yeah.
of Blue and Iris and
Right.
Watcher and,
Yeah.
well, everyone really,
Hmm.
minus a few Jows here and there, are
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah, yeah,
the same model. That's
yeah.
an incredibly efficient move. That's something that um, I mean, you can't do the same trick twice, right? But it's a it's
Can
something
you
that
not? We'll
you
see.
wish you
Yeah.
thought of. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's part of it is that, and I think this is something that, um, I don't know how other, like, again, this is like perhaps a general audience misunderstanding sometimes about artists, right? Or a cultural misunderstanding about artists, in that artists may just go and manifest things, right? How did they think of that? Like, how could they think of that? And when you actually talk to, say, working artists or practicing artists or people who have been doing it for a really long time, you realize that, like, to a degree, they have to act as a producer. Sometimes I clock in my head, like how mature an artist may be on their path if they can also think a little bit like a producer.
Hmm.
Um, and what does that mean? And like you see this also in TV writing. Like you go look at, um, you think about the Hollywood strikes, Hollywood writer strikes of like um, 2023. Yeah, 2023. One of the reasons why they were on strike was that they wanted to um, be paid and allowed to go on set to learn the practice of making an episode of television or making a movie. But specifically, I guess in this case, television, because if you don't know how to do that, if you don't know what like, as we might say in on the computer side, it's like, close to the metal, quote unquote. If you don't get close to the metal and if you don't kind of like get hands on in this way and know how walking through that stuff works, um, you will maybe write something that is uh, quote unquote naive,
Oh, totally.
um,
Yeah.
in that way, right? So like, you may turn in a TV episode script with like 30 unique locations, and then and the producer or whoever's having to put it together, the showrunner, it's like, WTF, like, we don't have money for 30 unique locations, especially if they're 30 unique locations that have to be built. Um, so I think part of this is, over time, like especially if writers want to become a showrunner, um, and I think that's many people's aspirations on the TV side. It's like then you have to go be on set and learn what it means to be on set and all this stuff. And so I think that's why they were striking, or that's why they were striking, I should say. One of the reasons is that they wanted to be supported in this act of being on set. Like many writers were going on set for free and just being on set to learn, but they wanted to be supported in that, or formalized.
Well, speaking of the expenses of running a
Yeah,
project, um, my hypothesis about
yeah,
something that might have related to theater, and I'm not sure if it does or not, but love to run it past you. It was it it struck me as um challenging maybe to imagine making this game and not at some point thinking it would be a lot cheaper if the interaction modality of this game was that of a visual novel.
yeah, right.
It is a lot of dialogue. It is primarily progressed through dialogue, and while you can operate your character in full like action adventure style through a 3D
Yeah.
space that is fully realized, um, your verbs are speaking. Your verbs are almost always speaking. Um, and this was something that was just as someone who's had to put time into like making that 3D stuff work. I know it's
Yeah.
hard. It's an investment.
Yeah.
Um, Thinking about it as a virtually realized aspect of theater kind of made that all make sense to me. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, and maybe reassessing the way I, as an audience member, was viewing the piece, um, was somewhat transformative for that. So
Nice.
that was my hypothesis as to
Well,
something that theater might have impacted.
and I think that is also true because I think from a specifically from like we're talking about modalities like I sometimes people ask like, yeah, well, why didn't you make it as a visual novel? Why didn't you make it as perhaps a to a certain extent a 2D game maybe even? And I'm like, I don't think our brains work that way.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like our brains, um, we feel more comfortable. At least I'm just talking personally here. Um, we are comfortable with 3D space. We're comfortable with staging in 3D space. We're comfortable lighting 3D space. Like I don't really know if someone asked me to make a 2D game. I don't really know how to do that. I don't really know how to conceptualize thinking in those. Um, I'm not comfortable thinking in those ways. So like 100% that theater background, right, is something that I felt like I needed the the affordances of 3D space and how it impresses upon the audience, all the things that comes with that, and um, to help tell the story, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think to be in our tool set or to be in our formal toolkit, and I think like it's interesting because we talk about verbs in games all the time. It's like, what are your verbs? And it's true. Like much of the verbs here, it's like you walk and talk, right? Um, and like occasionally you change the time uh, period, and the and I think we've made a big deal about like, okay, what are the verbs? But there's a degree in which like perhaps we have not made a similarly big deal about like how things that are not you and not your action affect you
Mm.
or like in a way that may be kind of like not as clear, like in a way that may be kind of like a strange, like less um, obvious way in which those things affect. um, so yeah, that's kind of an interest. That's another thing about, I think, another experiment of this game is just like, oh, like if we just remove some things and make space for some other things, how can we open ourselves up to these some new experiences that have not been allowed in other games because of X, Y, and Z for whatever reason, and because we're indie, we can kind of go in this direction, and because we are not market driven, I guess, in that way we can kind of go in this direction and kind of see. So yeah.
Well, one of the most impactful in that way moments in the game, if I were to single one out, would be Fixer's song. For me, that was a real moment. Fixer takes your character, the Watcher, to the side, and
Yeah.
she's really exposing herself. She sets up what she's about to do as something that she's very vulnerable about,
Yeah.
and then sings a song and plays on guitar, a song about um, exactly everything she's been told, and that was that was so wild to me because I was expecting in this moment um, to maybe get a player brain perspective on this. I was expecting her to start maybe unraveling the lies that she's been told. In this game, you are playing a character with a lot of generational lying going on, a lot of authoritarian oppression put onto this group that is told that reality is one thing, where in actuality it is this very different thing. And Fixer's writing the song and performing the song to you, both you, the character, and you, the player, in which she's putting up the presentation of being punk and being counterculture because she's playing a song she's not supposed to play. And then every word of it is exactly the same like lie that she's been told. And that's heartbreaking. She wants to be rebellious. She has plenty to rebel about that we as the player know, because we have a greater perspective on what's happening than any individual person, but she just won't be. And because she doesn't have it in her, she doesn't have anything that she's been told. That is really heartbreaking, and that is a very deft writing moment in the game. Something I wanted to pick on about that a little bit further was this theme of knowing some of the truth, but maybe not knowing what you don't know. It recurs a few places in the game. How do you reckon with that as an individual, maybe, who's trying to make a piece of art in which there has to be a truth underlying everything, but maybe no individual character can know any of it, or can know all of it, I should say, at any given time?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's when you have something like that, that's kind of like the fun. It has a lot of generative possibility. I'm gonna take a side. I hate the fact that they've generative AI has taken made the word generative kind of dirty now. But I mean, what I'm saying is that it's generative in the sense that it's generative for you as a perhaps a writer, and so anyways, I don't need to qualify this. I'm just saying that
I get you,
like when there's that tension, when there's no tension in that, right? Like I guess you just outline a tension in that. Okay, there's a truth, and not everybody knows and to what degree does everybody know it, and to what degree do they express that, and to what degree do they hide it, and degree are they like upfront about it? And like when there's that kind of tension, it helps with the writing a lot, in my opinion. It helps with like, like I can make some interesting decisions going into this about any given character or any given moment. And when there's no tension like that, it's really hard. It's like, I think. So I guess for us, we're just always like seeking that kind of thing. It's like, okay, how can we make this tension for ourselves so it can actually help us write?
Yeah,
well, not only be more interesting, but also help us write these things. But it does kind of like you do have to keep track of a lot of things because of this, especially like in this game. You're always like, well, I can't remember. Does this person know this? Or does this person know that? And then you got to like double check. You got to like, do a lot of double checking. And
in terms of information sharing, how important do you think it is for when you have a story structure like this, where there's one very, very grounded part of the story, and I would identify that as the time period in which Iris is just a girl in Canada growing up. There's one also grounded but based on concealed information part of the story, where the clones are growing up in their tank. But then there's also this very abstract thing that is a third part of the story with very abstract characters that we don't need to go into the details of right now. But they are, I would maybe define them as purposefully difficult to understand the entirety of. How important would you say it is for you, the creator, in a situation like that, to know all of the details of how those things work when the audience is never going to be explicitly told how they work?
So we 100% did not know how they all worked as we were going through it.
Okay.
And I think part of that is by choice. Like I think for us, we prefer to leave doors open for ourselves, um, as much as possible. Kind of like moving through the writing process. We like to keep those doors open. And I think part of it is the energy. Like I really strongly think that like um, an energy that you have as a writer or whatever you're doing, making it, your intention, I should say, um, does cross over to the audience um, in many ways. And so I think, sometimes people now talk about, oh, this story's going in these directions and I had no idea.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that it's going that way. And I think it's um and that was always our desire while writing it, because like we wanted to put ourselves in a position of not knowing. Also, so that if we didn't know, was there any way in which just the players would know or the audience would know? Like that's one way, perhaps maybe they somehow, I don't, maybe there's something that we can't see that they could see while we're
Mm.
going forward with it. But like if it's surprising to us, in a good way, perhaps it's also surprising to will be surprising to the player in a good way, I guess, um, and the audience in a good way. So, I mean, this is just how we work. I'm not saying that this is the way to do it. Like, I think there are many people who are much more, um, like I guess we would call ourselves like the gardeners, as opposed to plotters or people who are designing the whole machine and then charting the path through it.
Hmm.
There are people who can do that and also achieve the same result. I just think I think sometimes there's an energy that I value in, for lack of a better word, kind of stumbling through it. Um, I think there's like a kind of reckless energy that maybe gets inside of something if you do that, that I think I value quite a lot. And sometimes, again, it's intent, right? Like no matter what, can you theoretically recreate that energy if you already were like, galaxy brained about everything and then slowly revealing it bit by bit, right? I don't think so. And I think you know, uh, controversially, like something like Lost was like this, right? To I think they did have an endpoint, and a lot of people give Lost a lot of shit about how it went down, but like it's also very difficult. Like there was a lot of like network politics about how long the show would
Sure.
be and all that stuff, and having to write 26 episodes back in the day and fill out this thing. Um, but there's a reckless energy sometimes in it when they had to do that, right? Because like they're like, oh my god, we had to fill out this 26 episodes, and
Yeah,
they
and
didn't
and
know
I
where
like
they were
as a
going.
viewer,
You know?
you
Yeah,
prefer there to be a smoke monster rather than no
yeah,
smoke monster,
yeah,
even though maybe they can't pay it off.
yeah,
It is more interesting to see it at least once.
yeah.
But in a more concise work, it is amazing to hear. Um, you hear about that kind of reckless high energy development. I wouldn't have assumed that was this game. Personally, I would have assumed this was a much more um, front loaded planned development experience, just because of how well everything comes together. That balance between making sure it all does come together to one point, because I think the point of this game, maybe more than most, is so centralized into one area that I won't take away from you, the listener of this podcast, and I think you should come up with on your own. But I do think it comes to something. Um, so it is amazing to hear that it was more up in the air on the way to
Well,
get there.
and I think if I were to think back, the only reason why I was able to come to that point in a way that people felt centralized, or a way people felt cohesive to a degree, like was that at up until then, and like I will say that what we're talking about, like almost killed me in terms of my brain. Like I was just losing
Oh
my mind.
no.
Sure. No, no, no. I mean, I'm not like okay. I'm being dramatic. I'm saying like it was, but it was a very difficult, um, uh, um, what's the word? Like it was a very difficult artistic puzzle
Hmm.
to engage with, right? It was a challenging thing sitting and thinking about some of these things that we will not talk about because
The
but
listeners should have been given at this point,
yeah,
just for
yeah,
reference, instructions to play the game.
yeah.
That said,
Okay,
they
okay,
still might not have.
okay.
So
But anybody who's probably played all the way to the end probably knows what we're talking about. So, um,
yeah,
the like the I think if it were not that we had made like I don't think we would have reached that conclusion um at the beginning in like a classic like pre-production, production, post-production
hmm
context. And I think most, games don't really get made that way anymore. Like I think we've understood that like games don't get made in that kind of like filmic like waterfall style way of making things. Um or at least we're beginning to understand that. And I think we would not have come to that conclusion if you had asked us to like sit down and write a whole, you know, treatment um, of the whole thing. So I know this also may be controversial, but I hate synopses, writing synopses. I
yeah.
hate
Oh
writing.
no, no,
Yeah, I
not
just
controversial at
cannot.
all to me. I
Yeah,
can't do it.
and like I won't do it these days. Like if someone asked me to do it, I was like, I'm sorry, that's not something I do, and I can't do it, and it's going to be a waste of time, 100%. And
I
so
always hated writing book reports in school because
yeah,
like this guy that wrote the
yeah,
book we're celebrating here that we think is a
yeah,
well-written book, that's the most
yeah,
efficiently he could have done it. So what am I
yes,
supposed to
right,
do at 7 years old to
yeah,
put it
right,
in one paper?
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so like I think like that level of uh I think that we could only have come to this um thing that we reached, or many of the things that we reached, right? Like because we were making it one chapter at a time, um, by being able to sit there and look at what we had just made and think about it in its close to its entirety, and then build on it, and then keep doing that until
So
we
you
had to
were
stop.
making it one chapter at a time in a
Yes,
linear order?
yes, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So we made
Wow.
chapter one, chapter two. Actually, the only one that we made out of order was chapter four and three. Interestingly,
Would you
so
remind me which ones those
so
were
chapter
about?
four was Nowhere's Communion,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
chapter three was the Healer's Communion. So, um,
Okay.
yeah, I think we made that one out of order specifically just because of availability or something of writing. But we already kind of had an idea, and then of course we kind of tweaked it a little bit after we had to.
Mhm.
But largely that was like we did that 1 to 5, and then yeah, sequentially after that too. So at every point in time we were just like sitting with what we had. And so a lot of this production was like almost we made like 10 tiny games, or 10 1 to 2 hour games, um, versus making it like a whole thing.
Yeah, that's another thing. It
Yeah.
almost felt like it could have been released maybe episodically.
Yeah, it would have.
If
I
you had
mean, that
really
would have
wanted to
been
do it.
great if it was viable these days to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, no, I would love, it's kind of designed in that way, in spirit
Hmm.
that to be played one chapter a week. Maybe there is like um somebody does that, or a group of people do that or something, because like we always end on a kind of like cliffhanger a little bit, you know.
I would love to see
um
that style come back. I think everyone's so
yeah,
shy after Telltale, but
Yeah.
uh, just to have that moment where you can talk with someone
Yeah.
else who's playing it. Like, did you see what
Yeah.
Nowhere did? It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been
Yeah,
that's like the dream. That's my dream, but like I don't it's one of those things where it's like, I know that yeah, Telltale, you know, kind of um salted the earth on this a little bit because of the I think that I mean they were doing it while development. I think it seems to I mean and they were the pioneers of this, so I shouldn't, it's not like I'm being harsh with them. It's just that they've discovered and we've all discovered that it's like, oh shit, like, episodic is great, but then if you have to wait like, 6 months or even
yeah.
longer, that then it's really challenging.
Hmm.
I think We Are OFK, this game We Are OFK, did a really interesting thing where it was all done and then it was a timed weekly release on release. And so it was very much like a TV show in that, hey, the first 5 weeks of the game you can only play one chapter at a time. And then from then on you can just play it the whole, there's like some weird specific 5 week time. Um, I think that uh it's still challenging. I would love for that to become extremely viable. But we took the quote unquote more conservative route and was like, okay, we just have to pretend it's like a bingeable Netflix thing.
It's really, really hard to argue with the model of just paying for the whole thing at once and getting it. It's
Yeah,
really hard to imagine
yeah,
it working any other way.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Well, we're hitting about the end of our time. Thank you so
Mm,
much for being with us today, Remy. I really appreciated talking to you about 1000 times resist. I have one question I want to end each interview of this show with, and that's, how do you want someone to feel after playing your game?
um, interesting. Yeah, I think it's like, you know, um, there's this feeling, I guess this is affect of like, how did we get all the way here? Or like, how did we get here? Um, like so much has changed from the beginning to end. I mean, that's more like these are thoughts, but like, like there's like a inherent feeling. I think people have felt this before when they've played games.
Yeah, some
Um,
some feeling of internalized progress. Maybe I can relate to that.
yeah, or just something like where it's like, um, uh, you felt like you've come a long way in some form or fashion. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like our listeners to know either about the game or anything else in your life?
Um, oh, that's a good question. I guess you can like, we can do the socials thing where it's like you can follow me and the game or our studio Sunset Visitor on Blue Sky. I'm sure if you just search um, my name and or Sunset Visitor, you'll find it on Blue Sky.
We can throw it in the show
Um,
notes too.
oh, thanks. And we have, if you've played the game and you like the game, there's also some merch and vinyls that we've just released that are really cool. And I think if you want to check those out and you like any of them, that's kind of what we're doing right now, as well as other things that we can't talk about yet. But those are, we're just trying to, like, what's the word? We've been really grateful the community kind of growing around the game. So it's like we just want to give them things they want
Cool.
as much as possible. So, yeah.
Well, it's been great talking. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.